Welcome to the Redvee TV Show, supported by Chapel House for the 2023 season. We are getting towards the business end, and it is Saints' penultimate home regular season game. That makes sense. Hi, Kevin.
It does make sense. It does. Hello.
How are we?
You're very, very warm. My arms are sweating.
It is the Heritage round this week. I see you've put the Heritage jersey on the back of your chair and the Burnley shirt on your mannequin.
Yes. I have indeed, the claret and blue one. And a nice selection of shirts from across the years behind me as well.
You're a fan of that Caledonia one, aren't you?
I don't mind it at all. Wouldn't mind seeing it back in some guys as an away shirt. Maybe make maybe similar to the Heritage shirt. You could change the brown for green and change the blue to a little bit of a darker one. Maybe a bit more white on it. Why not?
First player you think of in that jersey?
Barry Ward.
I'm going for Darren Britt.
No, Paul Sculthorpe usually for some reason.
I think I've just got a pen picture of Darren Britt stuck in my mind wearing it.
Fair enough.
We'll have to do that sometime. I'll get a load of old kits and we'll just flick the image on the screen and we'll go, first player comes to mind when you see the kit.
Well, like black and yellow Komodo one.
Yes, that's Darren Albert for me in that one.
Jason Hooper.
One place to start this week, Kev. One place to start and one place only. It is the man, the myth, the legend, Tommy Makinson.
Yes. He's having a great run of form at the minute, isn't he?
Is it 10 tries in his last 5 games? I do like how he's got TM on his gum shield as well.
Hey, why not? Why not? Absolutely nothing wrong with that. I used to have a gum shield with me with my initials on it when I was at school, though.
Was that for rugby or your orthodontist?
Both.
Tommy has gone 8th in the all-time Super League Tryscorer charts. It was interesting listening to Paul Wellens in his post-match when he was asked about, obviously, Tommy Makinson and the impact on his club, on the club, and does he go down as one of the greatest of all time in a Saints jersey? And he said he's still got a few more years left in him. And he actually said whether that's 3, 4 or 5 years, which tells you that the thinking is that Tommy's got a long time in him yet.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think we had a discussion about this the other day as well. These days he doesn't rely on absolutely blistering pace. He's still quick, but he doesn't rely on blistering pace. He carries the ball so well, but still looks after himself. Yeah, as he's got older, he might pick up the odd niggle and the odd little injury here and there. But because of the athlete that he is, you can see him having a good couple of years ahead of him.
Maybe it's just me, but I don't think Tommy's a player who's ever relied on blistering pace. Listen, time fogs the memory, but I don't ever remember a time where you think if you free Tommy up on the wing, he's going to go 80 metres untouched. He's just always been absolute solid and an unbelievable finisher.
It's funny you say that because I remember the season we were at Widnes and he played against Wakefield, picked the ball up in loose play and went probably 70 metres. And that was the first time I actually looked at a player. And I think I turned to, whether it was you next to me or whoever was next to me, and said, "Who's this lad with pace?" Because we just didn't have it in the team at that point. Now, whether that is a barometer of the team at that point, as I say, or the fact that, listen, we were all a lot quicker when we were a lot younger. But I think he has had pace, and it has helped him. He probably hasn't been as pacey as Regan Grace, we'll say. But you're not a winger, and you're not put in Super League if you haven't got that little bit about you.
I think there's a lot to be said for Tommy that his place is never ever questioned. It's just an automatic that Tommy is in one of your wing spots.
Yeah, and I think that's testament to him over the years of how he has looked after himself, how he's performed, how he's come back from any adversity that he's had, whether that be injuries or, listen, he's had a suspension for something that for interference, I think we'll just call it. But he's come back from that, and he makes sure that
play the ball.
What's that?
To play the ball.
Yeah, they play the ball. It's he's just been able to keep that level of performance at such a high standard that, as you say, you hear about people immediately going, well, he could fit into centre, he can play at fullback. So he gives you that versatility. We asked him when we had his interview for his testimonial, had he ever thought about moving, say, into the second row, because that's how he runs the ball back in. And he said he hadn't. He'd not even thought about it like that far in advance. Listen, he might never do that. He might be more of a Ryan Hall, still out on that wing, still performing at such a high standard that, as you say, when you get a good couple of years down the line, he's still wearing that number 2 jersey, and he's still one of the first names on the team sheet.
I think, obviously, his try-scoring ability pretty much unparalleled in the Super League era for Saints, but it's his ability to aid the forwards, as does Mark Percival as well, that you can rely on a set that Tommy will take up carry 1, Percy will take up carry 2, and your forwards can have that little bit of a rest, just getting back on the side, ready to propel themselves and get that bit of energy back in the legs.
Yeah, and you can put that on Connie as well, John Bennison, whoever's playing in that 3/4 will help that and aid that. I think Tommy's the one that you more notice it more of, because he's just been doing that for years and years and years and making it almost standard wing play now.
Okay, there's going to be 2 questions here. First one is, where does he stand in Saints' all-time greatest wingers? Maybe stick to Super League era.
I'd have to stick to Super League, because if I start saying people like Tom van Vollenhoven, I never saw him play, so I can't.
And a completely different era.
I can't. Yeah. He's probably number 1. He probably is the best. I know there'll be arguments about Darren Albert, who was a speed merchant. I know there'll be arguments about Anthony Sullivan, who was probably the last of the proper wingers that I kind of remember, if you get what I mean by that. Like, the old school weren't carting it up as well. He might well have done, but it's probably at the time that my rugby league kind of knowledge was growing. And then you have got some kind of understated players as well. I actually saw somebody say Tommy Makinson's not better than Regan Grace on Twitter today, which I think, when you look at longevity and everything like that, yeah, Regan's the quicker player. But if you add everything into the mix, Tommy Makinson, in my opinion, comes out top.
I'll drop in. Obviously, Darren Albert was phenomenal in open space. It felt like with the speed he had, he was gone. It was going to be a try once he found that space. But it was only ever for a season or so. So I don't think you can put him into the debate as much. Obviously, Anthony Sullivan, early Super League era, many fans will have appreciated him. But again, it was only over a 3 or 4 year period. I think someone who's really underrated and probably never got the credit they deserve and is kept out of conversations is Aidy Gardner, just because of the team he played in. If Aidy Gardner played now, I think he'd be a shoe-in on one of your wings.
Oh, yeah, I think your wingers would be Aidy Gardner and Tommy Makinson, without a doubt. I know that he might have had his moments where he was maybe a little bit weaker in defence, but going forward, he was a great try scorer. And I think, as you say, when you bring corner flags into play as well, because Aidy Gardner would have played under the time where the corner flag was in touch. Once you bring that into play, you never know what Aidy Gardner could have done finishing wise. There's loads you can throw in this. There's loads that you can argue for and against. And I think you're right to bring Aidy into the conversation. But if you're looking for the best Saints winger in the Super League era, it's Tommy Makinson all round.
Agreed. Okay, second question then, Kev. How high can Tommy Makinson get on that list?
Oh.
Can I just say before you start, Ryan Atkins, 186 tries, but celebrated 346.
Very good. If he keeps himself in the condition that he's in now, there is no reason why he can't go fourth in that list. It just depends on Josh Charnley and Ryan Hall with regards to how many they keep putting on the board and how long they play on for. I know Ryan Hall's probably closer to the end of his career, just looking at age-wise, not meaning disrespect with that. But it just depends on how many they put on the board as well.
Yeah, I suspect Ryan Hall won't go more than Danny Maguire. I think he's coming to the end. I think Josh Charnley, with the form he's in, Josh Charnley born June 91, Tommy born October 91, by the way, so very similar in age, both 32, coming up this year. Josh Charnley could go top of that list for me.
Oh, yeah.
Probably could well be next year. Tommy's aim should be to end up second on that list for me.
It probably is his aim, but if you're asking me now and to put a number on it, I'd probably just aim for fourth on your own. Overtake Wello and Keith Senior's 199. Make sure you're hitting that 200 mark.
Absolutely. Just looking at now, 73 behind Danny Maguire. You'd hope he'd get another 5 or 6 before the end of the year, maybe. So you're looking at, you'd need 3 years of 20 tries. Yeah,
which could happen, but probably the way that tries are shared out a little bit more in this Saints team, you'd think that it probably isn't. So I think the aim really for Tommy, I know he'll just say he'll take each game as it comes, but if you got 200 or more, I think that'd be a really good reflection on his career.
That's a really good point, Kev. Tommy's probably been hamstrung a little bit by playing in a side where the tries get shared out so much. Whereas somebody like Josh Charnley has played for Warrington and Leigh, added massively to his tally in teams where he's their main strike threat.
Yeah, and there's no real problem with that because they recognise how dangerous he is near the try line. Whereas we've had the dangers of, who's Tommy Makinson played alongside Ben Barber, scoring tries for fun, Regan Grace, Mark Percival. He's got Connie who scores tries now with him. That's just players over the past couple of years. That's not even going back to years ago when you think of the 2014 season and a couple of the years after that when the team was getting moved around everywhere, that he'd have to play fullback and there'd be loads of injuries. So you might have someone scoring 2 or 3 tries who only played a couple of times for the club, Adam Quinlan being one of them. And all of a sudden, those tries getting shared about mean that, as I say, if he hits 200 and gets over 200, I think that'll be a really good milestone for him in his career.
Very, very quick question, not for a massive debate. If you were offered Josh Charnley as a winger for a year or two, would you take him?
Yep.
Correct answer. Right then, Kevin, it is time to move on to the Heritage squad for this week's game. 2 changes.
Yep, 2 changes. Wes Bruins and Matty Foster come in for the suspended and injured Connie Harrell and Dan Norman, who failed HIA after a late knock in the game against Wakefield, that when you actually watch the game back, you hear someone who's mic'd up, I take it to be a touch judge, saying to Marcus Griffiths, Marcus, just stop the game. It's Dan Norman. He's all over the place. Words to that effect anyway. Marcus Griffiths does exactly that and makes sure that Dan Norman's all right. What a brilliant use of the technology and people's common sense to make sure that that's done. Now, it may well be a doctor who said it if he's mic'd up to them. I'm not sure. I'd imagine it's just his touch judges, or his officials, whoever spotted that and getting it sorted quickly and in big raps to.
Yeah, really good officiating. Now, assuming Morgan Knowles is fit. Oh, that has come up. View all memories. It's a stand somewhere. I don't know where we were on that one. Never mind. Assuming everyone's fit. The team I'd go with, Kev, obviously the two changes. I'd put Ben Davies in for Connie back in the centres. I'd put Percy alongside Makinson. Davies and Benison together. Lomax and Dodd and your halves as usual. I would start with Matty Lees and Morgan Knowles as your props, just to give you that bit of grunt early on and size. Robes at 9. And then Matautia, Batchelor and Bell rounding out the team. And then your bench, Louis, George Delaney, Moses Mbai, Sam Royal.
Yep, that'll do.
I'd be shocked if it's any difference. I think the only difference potentially you have is if you start Delaney over Knowles.
Yeah, I think the only question is over Knowles' involvement and whether we think, you know what, we can get 30 minutes out of him without aggravating his injury that he's got. So we put him on the bench and just can manage it and almost do. He comes on 10, 15 minutes before half time, has 10 minutes after half time, then another 10 minutes, 15 minutes in the second half, start of the second half. You get to rest players and get a good stint out of him. If he's injured, if he's not involved at all, I would imagine Lewis Baxter comes into that squad. He's the one who's been closest to it. But I can't see too many changes.
No. Now, normally at this point, we would put up the Leigh Leopards squad to be able to discuss it, but they can't be bothered to tweet it out. You can't find it on pretty much any of the news sites. It makes the game look really, really amateur. But we believe it's pretty much their standard 21, but John Arciata and Josh Charnley face late fitness tests. Kev, this is a game where we just need to have learnt lessons from our last two games against them.
Definitely. Forget anything that's gone beforehand and just try and meet them big in the middle, because that's what they've got. They've got some big forwards. Just try and meet them in the middle and try and even get the ball out wide. Once we've got the hard work in, earn your right, get the ball out wide and make sure that we're keeping them pressed back. Kicking game's going to be important. So kick and chase is going to be important. We can't fall into an arm wrestle with them.
Yeah. Leigh come to the Totally Wicked Stadium seeking their first victory in St Helens for 41 years, just under. Their last win was a 1910 victory in the Slalom Lager Championship.
Wow.
Just have a slalom lager now, Kevin.
Yeah. Just as long as it was nice and cold.
Absolutely. Will be a little bit of a slippery slope, though, I think.
Oh, no.
Do we need to be wary of the disciplinary this week? Given that we're playing Warrington next week.
We always need to be. But yeah, this week, don't lose your head. I hope that any kind of thoughts of I don't know, retribution, possibly, after we lost a couple of players to what are or have been deemed legal tackles. I hope there's nothing, kind of no niggle like that in the game. I hope that our players can keep their heads and nothing stupid. If you get pinged for something that is a fair enough challenge and you get done for it, we'll just have to go down the route of doing what Salford have done and appealing twice, although they've failed with the second appeal. So obviously they didn't. We didn't loan them our magic wand for that.
Maybe they need a third appeal.
Maybe they do. They could do. Why not? Go for it, lads.
Last question then, Kevin. Scoreline.
Be tight, this one, I think. 28-18.
It's not the last question. This is the last question. Well, I was talking in the presser last week, basically saying that you don't look at scoreline, obviously chasing that points difference down, and they allow the performances to take care of themselves, and the scoreboard will reflect that. But when it comes to potentially the last game in a couple of weeks, if there is a scoreboard or scoreline to chase, can you help having that in your heads?
I don't think you can. I think there will be one eye on it. I don't think you will at all not have it in your head. It'll be something to kind of take the heat off the lads in the press, but they will be looking at putting teams to the sword in these last 3 games. Maybe not going out and saying, right, in the last 10 minutes, we might be 20 points ahead. We need to be 30, 40 points ahead. So start slinging it about everywhere, because that's when you can lose your points difference as well. But I would think that they've got one eye on it. And once you start getting to Warrington and then Hull, if you're still points behind, especially Hull, we're going to have to be slinging it about and make sure you get the win. But then if you've got that and you're comfortable in the last 10, 20 minutes, start trying some trick plays just to get yourself up the table.
Very reminiscent of 13 years ago this week, where Saints were beating Castleford at home in the final regular season game against Castleford. They needed that extra score to get themselves a home playoff, and Big Kieran toppled over the line and won us all a load of money.
Yeah, literally written in the stars, that, wasn't it? It was just, it's one of those that we do it nowadays when we say, oh, someone's coming back from injury or someone's not scored in a while. And we say, that was the bet. That was the bet. Well, that day, that was the bet for Cunningham last try there. And he did it a couple of weeks later against Huddersfield as well.
If it's anywhere near close then, and we could potentially finish top of the table, and we need to score a few extra points to win the league leaders' shield, James Roby, final try scorer.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
How weird would that be if that was to happen?
Yeah, it'd be, well, they say that fairy tales don't exist. It would be one, wouldn't it?
Right. Gotta have a few quid on that now.
Yeah.
Okay, right. I'm going to go for Saints 20, Leigh 12. I think this is a game where we just need to make sure we get the win.
Correct.
Okay, then. I will see you, Kevin, for the instant reaction on Friday. I'll probably see you before then, but I'll definitely see you for that. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And we'll catch you at the weekend, hopefully, following another Saints victory. Catch you soon.